Hey everybody, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. On today's episode of the vlog/podcast, we're going to be talking about something that I just recently started to dive into, and that topic is solar. So I recently picked up a Renogy 100 watt polycrystalline solar panel with a 30 watt controller. It's PMW style, which we'll get into a little bit more here in a second. But I want to kind of just demystify solar a little bit. And I want to talk about both how it's pretty simple. Like overall, it's really a simple idea and the wiring is extremely simple. But it's also very complex. So I'll kind of get into those two things, like why solar is complex and why it's also simple at the same time. Hopefully give you guys some tips and save you a lot of time after the research that I've done. So if you want to learn more, stay tuned. All right, guys, so as I mentioned, on today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about solar. And actually, unlike a lot of the episodes that I've done so far, although I always kind of ask questions from you guys, I really do have some questions this time. So this is going to be more of like a conversational style. The point being that, I'm new to this stuff too, and I've been racking my brain and just searching online, and I'm going to post some links down below to some of the stuff that I've found. But I'm sure that a lot of you guys and gals listening have already kind of gone through a lot of this stuff. You may have trailers that are powered by solar and deep cycle batteries or, things like that. So where my knowledge kind of falls short is once you hit the fuse block, right? So you've got your power from the solar coming in, going to the battery, from the battery to a fuse block, and then out to different, outputs, if you will. That's where I'm kind of starting to do the most of my research right now. But so the stuff that I want to touch on is, a few different topics. So panel selection, as far as, what sort of thought process I went through and everything that I learned that led me to the decision that I made in the end of the one that I chose. Also simplicity of wiring. So again, I want to talk about how simple that is. And then I'm also going to touch on where it becomes a little bit more complex. And then third, the benefits. So what are the benefits of solar, right? Why did I choose to go with solar versus maybe just, a deep cycle battery that I could charge off my alternator? So those are the three things we're gonna touch on today. So let's start with panel selection. So as you start to read more, you're going to see a lot of stuff about polycrystalline panels and monocrystalline panels. Kind of in my layman's knowledge of what I've got so far, I can give you a little bit of a breakdown of what that means. So they're basically just two different types of ways that they make the solar panels. Historically, sort of the polycrystalline have always had a lower output than the monocrystalline. So if you want the purest, highest output that you can possibly get, you want to go with a monocrystalline. In my case, I chose to go with a polycrystalline to keep the cost down, but I went with a really well-known name brand, which is Renogy, for my solar panel. So I kind of decided, one, their polycrystalline panels are almost up to the level of the monocrystalline panels because their quality is so good. So, and I could be wrong on these numbers, so if I am, feel free to comment down below and tear me a new one. But the Renogy polycrystalline is about 18-ish%. So light that it's capturing, turning it into energy, it's about 18% efficient as far as how much of that sun power it's able to then convert into electricity. A lot of the monocrystalline ones are around 23 to 25 max, I think. So it's not a huge difference between those two, but the monocrystalline are significantly more expensive. So for example, my setup is the Renogy 100 watt polycrystalline panel with a 30 amp. It's a recently upgraded 30 amp PMW style controller. So that's the next thing that you have to learn about is types of controllers. So the main two are the PMW, which I don't know what it stands for, but that's sort of the more basic type. And then the MPPT, which is like multi-point tracking. There's another P in there, I know. But the MPPT ones are just smarter basically, so they can read more from like what's coming out of your battery and what level your battery is at, and then provide equal power from the sun. Because you have to keep in mind that as the clouds go in front of the sun, the power drops off the solar panel, it reduces, so then you're getting less charge to the battery. The MPPT controller is just smarter about how it regulates that power and how it sends it to the battery, and then I think also how it keeps the battery sort of float charged or topped off. However, nowadays the PMW controllers are also very good. So they're not as good as the MPPT. Typically, like in my case, I don't have the digital LED readout on it. It's just lights for, power coming in and battery power going out to the battery. I don't really care about that. Honestly, it's going to be in the back of my truck. I'm not going to be looking at it that much. So again, in my opinion, for the cost, the PMW made sense and the polycrystalline panel made sense, but I really wanted a good brand that's going to be tough, especially since it's strapped to the hood of my truck, which I'll put some video on here too, kind of how I did that. But with it being up there and having some vibration and stuff, I just wanted to have the best quality panel that I could get. So anyways, that's why I went with that stuff. Again, there is a ton to go through. There's a ton to think about as far as what kind of wattage the solar panel will put out. A lot of people that I've heard go with 50 watt panels or 40 watt panels. You can get 70, 100. I went with 100 because I wanted it to be overkill, right? Like it was, so basically my kit, to give you kind of a price breakdown and an idea here, new was about $190 for, again, the solar panel, the wiring from the solar panel to the controller, and then the wiring from the controller out to the battery and the controller itself. I actually bought it used on Amazon in like new condition for about $125 because I figured it's going to be strapped to the hood of my truck anyways. It's not like I need a brand new one. And it came boxed up and it looked just like new. It didn't look like anybody had ever opened it. So I'm really happy with that choice that I made. When you're looking at, MPPT controllers, the price goes up dramatically. When you're looking at monocrystalline, it goes up. So I think a lot of those I was looking at were between $300 and $600. Again, if you're really, really into it, or if you're, running an RV or something like that, and you need a ton of power and you have a ton of accessories and AC things running off of, all these different things in your RV, then you would want to consider, maybe monocrystalline, and you might need more panels. For me, again, my goal is to keep a battery topped off from the sun while I'm off grid, and just use that basically as my way to separate my starter battery from this additional battery that I'm going to use to charge, phones, laptops, radios, cameras, that sort of stuff. So again, I'm just trying to literally separate my starter battery so that if I do go somewhere and I stay somewhere for 3-4 days in a row, I don't have to worry about waking up with a dead battery or anything like that, and I can still keep all my stuff charged up. Plus, location-wise, everything's in the back of my truck, and that's where I plan to run the cables to, mount the controller, and then have all my outputs going to. So I'm basically going to build custom slots for all my stuff, for my radios, for my my laptop, all that sort of stuff in the back, and then have them back there just separately, just charging off that battery. Then during the day, when the sun's on the solar panel, it's charging the battery back up, totally separate from the battery, no draw on the main starter battery, just keeps it totally separate. So that's about it for panel selection. Gave you a little bit about controllers, and then also about wattage selection. Again, a lot of the stuff that I found is about home solar and things like that. I feel like for a vehicular solar system, 100 watts is a pretty good amount. I do have a buddy, he's one of the featured channels on my channel, Happy Wanderlust, who mentioned that he ran a 70 watt panel for a couple week trip that he went on, and he never had any problem keeping batteries topped off and everything charged off the solar. So again, I think, 70 to 100 watts, somewhere in there should be plenty, as long as you can keep it in the sun. So on to the next part. So talking about simplicity of wiring. So this is kind of the beautiful part, and I'll try to show you some of this with some video overlays that I took while I was wiring it up, but it's really simple. So my background for wiring is mostly car audio. Back in the day, I had subs, and I would, replace all the speakers in my car and do that kind of stuff, replace head units, that sort of stuff. So I'm somewhat experienced with automotive wiring, but I'm by no means an electrical engineer or anything like that. So the beautiful thing about the solar is it's really, really simple. So you have a positive and a negative coming out of the back of the solar panel via 2 cords. And then on your controller, it's really clearly marked, and I'll show you a picture here of what that looks like. But it basically shows a picture of a solar panel with a negative and a positive. You put the negative in the negative, the positive in the positive, and you've got juice coming into the controller. During the day in the sun, you'll see your lights are going to light up, showing you that you have incoming power. Then, conversely, there's a picture of a battery with a positive and a negative. Basically, you're going to take that positive and you're going to put it on the positive of the battery, negative, negative of the battery. You're done. You've got a battery, you've got a solar panel, solar flows through the controller keeps the battery topped off. Once it gets full, then it goes into a float pattern, and it will, decharge and recharge the battery as necessary to keep it alive as long as possible. Again, the MPPT controllers are going to be a little bit smarter about this, but even my PMW has a float capacity on it where it can keep things float charged, and it can recognize the type of battery, so it'll light up a different color LED based on whether it's lithium or AGM or whatever the type of battery is. So the simplicity of wiring is amazing. So that takes us, though, just from the solar to the battery. But then you're basically, and again, this may sound kind of rudimentary to a lot of you, but I've done a lot of wiring off of my car battery to like run a sub or things like that. I've never wired to, like, for example, like some sort of an output for a DC plug, although it's still just positive and negative. So I've heard a lot of things about fuse blocks. So this is just basically where I've stopped my research, and I've got to restart it tonight. So if you guys have any tips, please comment down below, shoot me an email at allthingsoverlanding@gmail.com, hit me up on the website, wherever it's easiest for you, social, wherever it's easiest for you. But hit me up with any articles that you've got or any, really great resources. I've been checking out Overland Bound and Expedition Portal, and there's a ton of information on there. But again, I want it rudimentary, and I hate to say it, but I kind of want it spoon-fed. Like, I just want to know. Again, most things don't talk about vehicular, right? Like, they don't talk about charging a laptop and a couple cameras and a couple GMRS radios. They talk about running a fridge freezer and running all these lights and, all this stuff, maybe running a winch off the battery and just all this stuff that I don't want. I literally want a source where the sun power comes in, charges a battery, and then I can discharge it to recharge my stuff, right? I'm not trying to run crazy AC stuff, no can openers, no coffee machines makers, that sort of stuff. I just want to recharge stuff off the battery. So I think I've got a pretty good grip on it. But again, any specific to automotive, fuse block wiring diagrams or anything like that would be awesome if you guys have any. As I find them, I'll update this video on YouTube and the post on podcasts with links to that stuff, because again, I've got more research to do myself. But so it's pretty simple, but then it can get a little bit crazier the more stuff you start to add on to that. But I do love the idea of the solar coming into the battery, a main kill switch from the battery going to the fuse block, and then just everything breaking out really cleanly off the fuse block to the different outputs that I'm going to be using. So again, overall though, simplistically, it's really pretty easy. It's almost easier than, trying to connect into existing, rear speakers to pull signal off of through a converter to a sub. So don't be scared of it, but do your research. Watch videos like this, search on an Overland Bound or an Expedition Portal, see what you can find on there, because there is a ton of information, and take your time, because I've also had to return a few things because I jumped on something thinking, wow, this is a great deal and it will solve my problems, and then I would get it. For example, I bought a 5mm plug, which is the size that plugs into my little battery pack that I got, my separate battery pack, thinking, oh, I can just take the solar out of the controller and plug it straight into that plug and plug it into my battery pack and that'll charge. No, it doesn't work like that. So you've got to take it out to like a car battery type dealer, an AGM deep cycle type battery, and then discharge from there. So anyways, that's the simplicity of the wiring. So then getting on to the third part here. So benefits of solar, right? It's kind of self-explanatory, some of it, right? I mean, free power, free unlimited power from the sun is really cool. I'm actually in the process of building, and I got probably about half of it, a little more than half of it done today, a permanent set of, I've got 2 drawers in the back in a boxed sort of thing that goes behind my seat. The other side, my skinny part that folds down of the seats folds down, and then I've got a 36-inch drawer side that goes back there with a drawer that we built on top of it on a 36-inch slider that'll hold 250 pounds. It's going to hold my cooler on the top and a water bottle on the top and maybe eventually a fridge freezer. And then underneath of that is another slide-out drawer with a grill on it. I'll put a picture of that all here in the video. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because, again, that's kind of my focus is the back of the truck. I'm trying to build out a permanent structure back there where all my stuff is going to be. On top of that, there's going to be a lip that goes around the top of the drawer system. And in that is where I want to set all my stuff, my radios, I have a spot for my laptop, little, rechargeable 24,000 milliamp batteries that I use to like run a fan in my tent or run the Luminoodle, things like that, like things that I need little portable power bricks for. But I want to recharge those then all off the solar. So, there's those benefits. The other one that I've already kind of mentioned is I love the idea of separation from my starter battery. So again, just to keep it all totally separate and to keep it safer, I love the idea of I only charge off of the solar battery, and that's what I worry about. I just use that battery for that purpose. There's also another benefit here. When you're looking at like a Group 31, Group 35, I forget the exact number, I think it's Group 31, that's like the car battery size deep cycle. Those are, for a decent one, they're $300 to $600, just depending on the brand that you get. So they can be really expensive. Even Optimas, which used to be good, but from what I've heard are kind of declining in quality, are still $275 to $300. And I just replaced my battery about a year ago, not even. So it just doesn't make sense for me to do that. However, from a cost standpoint, the new one, what I'm going to go with, I think, is a 35 amp hour battery, and I'm going to see how that works. But I can get that for about $60. So I'm going to try that and see how well that works, and if it can recharge a lot of my stuff, and if I can get it fully recharged off the solar. If not, what I've seen a lot on like Overland Bound and things like that is a 100 amp hour battery is really where you want to be. But again, I think those people are like off grid for like 5 to 7 days, and they're running fridge freezers off these things, and they're, you know what I mean? Like they're running a ton of stuff off of this that I won't be doing. I'm just going to really simply be just recharging some things. Now, maybe eventually, again, when I go to like a fridge freezer, that may change. But I'm kind of thinking ahead here too, to where it could be a thing where eventually when my starter battery that I've got now does die, then I will buy a deep cycle dual purpose, starter battery that's also deep cycle. And then I could just hook the solar up to that. I could just reroute the wiring and hook it up to that battery instead of the one in the back, or buy another controller and add a solar panel somewhere else and split it off, or get a portable one, because I've heard a lot of good things about that too. Mine is mounted to the hood and it's kind of at an angle. However, I may have to move the truck around to keep it in the sun depending on the campsite. Now, most of the time where I've been has been pretty sunny and it's been pretty open. Like when we went to West Virginia, everywhere we camped, I was pretty much out in the open and I was full sun all day long. But eventually I may go to sort of like a briefcase style or a folding style solar panel so that I can move it easier and then run wires back to the battery to keep it charged. So there's those benefits. And then the last one is sort of just that off-grid availability of power, right? So again, instead of having to start the truck and run the truck for a half an hour to charge up the battery, I can just count on the solar to keep everything charged and then still know that my starter battery is going to be there when it's time to go. So again, I hope that gave you guys some good info. I'm going to post as many links below as I can to things that I've sort of found. But I would love to hear from you guys too, right? So like I've said many times in this video already, or this podcast already, I'm not an expert. So I'm just learning. I'm learning as I go. So any tips that you guys have, any links that you guys have, I'd love to see them. That would really help me out. But so yeah, that's what I got this week. So again, I hope that was helpful. If you don't already, please subscribe. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, websites, allthingsoverlanding.com. Trying to put out as much good content as I can for you guys. If you have suggestions for things you'd like to hear, please post about that in the comments on YouTube or throw it up on my social channels, wherever. I respond to everything. And thanks again for watching or listening to this episode. So hope you guys are having a good one. Get out there, live, learn, discover. Check out your environment. Go camping. Look into solar panels, but do your research before you start just willy-nilly buying stuff. Thanks again. Take care.